Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today is going to be a very simple recording edit here. It's Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to those who are celebrating this day, who are fathers out there. I have some family to celebrate with, but there are things going on right now that I want to speak on for a little bit here. As the title suggests, I want to talk about this possibility that Metroid Prime 4's big moment could be upon us. And what I'm referring to here is maybe an Nintendo Direct in less than 48 hours from now, maybe less than like 40 hours from now. It seems to be coming quite close, this event. And even earlier today, we finally heard from the greatest Nintendo-specific leaker ever in Pioro. Pioro on Twitter said this: Nindai Doko? And what people are seeming to interpret from this, Nindai seems to be kind of like a fun Japanese way to refer to Nintendo Direct in a short manner, and then Doko would be when, so basically Nintendo Direct when. And so this isn't necessarily like a leak, it seems like Pioro's just kind of teasing us, we're not entirely sure. But something else that was said that was quite interesting is this part here, where Nick 5 Cypress says, "I hope you're not a dude from California instead of a bird from Diamond City. You can't trust anyone anymore." This is in reference to the recent big leaker Midori having this whole controversy and drama, and Piora responds by saying, "This is incorrect information." So for those that don't understand the reference, Midori, the person that's been through all this drama as of late and has since deleted their account, used to say all the time in response to different people, "This is correct information." So Pioro saying this is incorrect information is clearly a reference to this fallen leaker. Now, is there anything to extrapolate from this? Well, maybe you could take it to mean that it's fueling the fires of what may be a direct that's going to be announced tomorrow. We shall see. There are the different rumors and also some different leaked announcements that seem to be suggesting a direct is happening on Tuesday. We know a direct's coming at some point in June, so really, maybe wait another week or so, maybe we just wait a day or so. Regardless, the time is close. And so really what I want to get into here is that once we get this direct, it may be the presentation where we finally see Metroid Prime 4, this game that was announced back at E3 2017. It has been over 7 years since its announcement, and we have yet to see anything truly on the game. Now, we're expecting for it to come close. A lot of the conversation of late has evolved to 2025. This is what I've been thinking for a while. I've been leaning more and more so in this direction. I recently put out a video where I said I was convinced that Metroid Prime 4 will be a 2025 release as a cross-gen title for both Switch 1 and Switch 2. And I still stand by that thinking, but it does come with a potential disappointment for some who want the game this year in 2024. Now, we don't know what's actually going to happen. If the game's coming out in 2024, then for sure it will be in the Direct. If it's coming out in 2025, then it's an uncertainty. But I would argue that if it is indeed the case that Metroid Prime 4 is being positioned as a cross-gen title to release early on for Switch 2, maybe a launch title, if not maybe just within those first few months, but as a title that's meant to be this big transition title where they show the enhancements on Switch 2. It would be something kind of like what they did with Breath of the Wild. And what's interesting about Breath of the Wild is before Nintendo showed off the Switch, they had this big E3 moment where they finally showed off Breath of the Wild in detail, and it was an amazing game. It was the single game that won E3 for Nintendo during the Wii U era where they had nothing else to show off. And it was so impressive. But from that event, there was so much excitement that was built for this game, and then that bled into the Switch reveal, which showcased this game running on the console, and it ended up being a launch title, and then Breath of the Wild ended up becoming the best-selling Zelda game of all time by a significant margin. And so you look at Metroid Prime 4, yes, I understand the Metroid series is not as big of a seller as the Zelda series, but it's not a terrible seller. And in terms of quality, Metroid has always been right up there with Zelda. You can make the argument that Metroid is of higher quality than Zelda. Some Zelda fans out there may cry foul at the idea, but Zelda's my favorite franchise. But Metroid is right there as well. And so when I talk about some of my favorite games, like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, like Breath of the Wild, I hold them in similar esteem to games like Super Metroid, like Metroid Prime. And so for me, I've always held Metroid Prime 4 in high regard. I've had a great level of anticipation for this game, and in some ways, I'm more excited for Metroid Prime 4 than I ever could have been for Tears of the Kingdom. Mainly because Tears of the Kingdom was a direct follow-up to Breath of the Wild, so there was a little bit of that sameness quality to it that I do think somewhat takes away from the overall excitement, even though there was a great deal. But also, Metroid has been dormant for so long. We're going to finally get a modern Metroid after such a long time. Metroid Prime 3 hadn't released since 2007, and of course we had things like Metroid Other M, Metroid Prime Federation Force, Metroid Dread, and my point is in terms of modern 3D Metroid, in other words the Metroid Prime series and not a spin-off, we're closer to 2 decades as opposed to 1. So it's been a long time. And similar to games like Pikmin 4, where Nintendo took such a long time working on Pikmin, but they looked at the success of Pikmin and they assessed the overall structure of Pikmin and made changes to the formula that allowed it to reach a larger audience, and now Pikmin 4 has gone on to become the best-selling Pikmin game to date, and growing. I wouldn't be surprised if they're also assessing Metroid in a similar way. I do think that Prime 4 will ultimately still feel like a Metroid Prime game, a Metroid game, but it's going to have evolutions. They're going to do things to have this game reach a large audience while still being really good. And they've spent so many years on this development. Retro Studios, a studio that prides themselves on being the cutting edge when it comes to Nintendo graphics and performance, this is going to be an impressive game. And so I feel like they're going to want to maximize on this. So I think when they finally show off this game, be it in this Direct or a few months later for Switch 2, they want to make this out to be a big deal. Because it is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a good game. And I think Nintendo wants to find a way to elevate it. I think that's in part why they've been so quiet about this game. It's not a silence that's suggestive of bad things, but rather, they know how long we've been waiting, and they don't want to show us this game until it's perfectly right, and they're going to be able to give us a release window. And something else I wanted to speak on that I feel is tangentially related to this, is that many people, I feel, are sleeping on this game. Many people don't agree with what I've been saying in this video. Many people don't think Metroid's that big of a deal. And in large part, it's because Metroid is not that big of a seller. So there's a lot of people that aren't excited for Metroid Prime 4, or just not that excited for Metroid Prime 4, because they don't play Metroid, because they don't understand how good this series is, or just are more focused on the fact that it isn't really that big of a seller. And I think sometimes we look at sales numbers and we put too much stock into that fact alone. They are important details and they are indicative of the popularity of a game, sure, but you gotta start somewhere. Let's look at Luigi's Mansion. Luigi's Mansion 3 has sold over 13 million copies on Nintendo Switch. It's a big seller. But once upon a time, Luigi's Mansion wasn't that big of a seller. It was closer to Metroid level. So Luigi's Mansion 1 sold about 3.3 million on the Nintendo GameCube. Metroid Prime sold about 2.8 million. So they were comparable. Then on Nintendo 3DS, Dark Moon sold 6.5 million on the system. The series elevated significantly, and then on the Switch, it elevated again. And so my point simply is, when we look at something like Metroid that has the quality, assuming Nintendo markets the game right, and it's put on a platform where people will appreciate it, it can elevate. Sometimes I think people get stuck on this idea that whatever a game has sold in the past, that should be the expectation. But rather what I think is that when it comes to certain series, especially series that are of high quality, like Luigi's Mansion, like Metroid, like Pikmin, where Nintendo does put in resources and make sure these games are incredible, they can grow and reach a larger audience. So in the case of Metroid Prime 4, I do think we're looking at a big moment here. I do think when this game is shown off, it's going to be something special, not just for us fans, but for the series itself. And so I'm very much excited for what's to come here. But of course, that is my opinion. Do you think this is going to be Metroid Prime 4's big moment, or are you not expecting really anything that impressive? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.